Hello everyone, welcome to our webinar today. The topic for today's webinar is Expanding Clean Energy Access and Benefits, Award-Winning Programs in Connecticut and Maryland. And we have an excellent panel of guest speakers with us today, but before we hand it over to them, I'd like to go over a few webinar logistics. We're using a newly updated version of GoToWebinar, so if you have any feedback for us, you can leave that for us in the post-webinar survey. All attendees are in listen-only mode, so your webcam and microphone are disabled. You can see here, if you'd like to submit questions and comments, you can click on this icon. Please submit your questions as the webinar is going. Don't wait until the end. We'll save about 15 minutes at the end for the panelists to answer your questions. Speaker bios are available to read in the materials section. Automated captions are also available. And finally, this webinar is being recorded. We will email you a webinar recording in 24 to 48 hours, and it will also be posted on CISA's website at cisa.org/webinars. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our host for today's webinar, my colleague, Vero Bourg-Meyer.
Hello, everyone. Let me readjust this for a second. Welcome to this webinar on expanding clean energy access and benefits at the Clean Energy States Alliance. My name is Vero Bourg-Meyer, and I'm CISA's Deputy Director. So the Clean Energy States Alliance, or CISA, we are a national nonprofit coalition of public agencies and organizations working together to advance clean energy. And today I am delighted to be here with David Comis, Brandon Bowser, and David Beech. And next slide, please. We'll do a quick introduction, and then we'll get right into it. These are some of our members, and Maryland, and both Maryland Energy Administration and the Connecticut Green Bank are our members. They were one of the winners of the State Leadership in Clean Energy Awards for 2024, and we're going to talk about why that was the case today. Okay. Next slide, please. There you go. So these are our speakers. So we will hear first from David Beech from the Connecticut Green Bank, and then from David Comis from the Maryland Energy Administration. So David Beech, excuse me, because we have two Davids. David Beech is a senior manager on Connecticut Green Bank's investment team. He provides financing for renewable energy and energy efficiency projects through C-based, the Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, and the Commercial Solar Power Purchase Agreement, PPA programs. He evaluates proposals for investment in renewable energy, energy efficiency, and other clean tech projects as part of the Green Bank's Capital Solutions program. He also leads the Green Liberty Note program that we will be talking about today. Second, we will hear from David Comis, another David, who serves as Senior Energy Program Manager at the Maryland Energy Administration, referred to as MEA. His focus areas include solar energy, energy storage, nuclear energy, and grid resilience. And prior to working at MEA, he helped the U.S. Department of Energy, DOE, develop their first strategic sustainability performance plan and supported the Federal Energy Management Program in the areas of renewable energy and technology deployment. And very interestingly, prior to this, David served in the U.S. Navy, ultimately commanding the submarine USS Maine and later the Office of Naval Research, Global Naval Research. So in addition to our two speakers, we also have our third eminent expert in our midst here today, Brandon Bowser, who is MEA's Section Chief for Clean Energy and Resilience. You'll hear from him in the Q&A. He will be there to help on that front. He supervises the team of energy program managers, energy specialists, and rebate administrators with whom he works to develop incentive programs that help Maryland communities, critical infrastructure, businesses, nonprofits, and other organizations as well, adopt clean energy, clean and resilient energy programs like solar, PV, microgrids, and other. And notably, he led the Maryland's award-winning Resilient Maryland program. Okay, so first we'll turn to David. So David, which David, you're asking? David Beech, to discuss the Connecticut Green Bank's Green Liberty Notes. So this program, both of these programs that we're going to talk about today are really innovative. That's why they won this award. The Connecticut Green Bank's program was developed following the Green Bank's highly successful Green Liberty bonds, which you might have heard of. The Notes program is providing small dollar investors with the opportunity to support and benefit from clean energy development. It is the first one-year maturity designated green bond offered via a crowdfunding campaign. So that's really exciting. That means that there is an easy online access and process that doesn't involve a broker. All right. And then after that, we will hear from David Comis, who will discuss the Maryland, community solar, low to moderate income. You'll hear us use the word LMI as a shorthand, low to moderate income power purchase agreement grant program. And that is a program that is providing funding to community solar subscriber organizations, enabling them to offer below market electricity rates to LMI households. And David Comis will tell you all about this. So on this note, I will pass the mic over to David Beech so that he can tell us more about Connecticut's Green Liberty Notes program. And please do drop your questions in the chat. And we will get to them at the end of the presentations. See you on the other side.
Thank you, Vero. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So yeah, I just wanted to start with a little intro to the Green Bank. We are the country's first state-level green bank, established back in 2011 as a quasi-public state agency. And our mission is to use limited public dollars to attract private capital investment and offer green solutions that help people, businesses, and all of Connecticut thrive. This is guided also by our vision, which is a planet protected by the love of humanity. So we can go ahead to the next slide as well. Just want to give an intro to the some of our goals. Specifically, the program I'm speaking about today is going to be connecting with the middle and right goal. So the middle one being pursuing investment strategies that advance market transformation in green investing. And then also the goal on the right, which is to strengthen Connecticut's communities, especially vulnerable communities, by making the benefits of the green economy inclusive and accessible to all individuals, families, and businesses. So the next slide is going to talk a little bit more about the Green Bank model as a whole. So our job is to take limited public funding and use it to attract private investment into the clean energy space. So how do we do that? We kind of have four modes of operating here that I can walk you through really quickly. One, offering credit support. So local community banks with loan loss reserves for loans that they might give to homeowners to do solar or energy efficiency projects. We also do co-investment, so investing with private capital partners and trying to find ways to be innovative so we can bring those private capital investors into the market, get them comfortable so they can start doing these investments on their own. We also have the investment side of the house, which supports performance-based incentives to increase private investment and capital deployment in certain areas. So we had great success with our residential solar incentive program, and now we are working on energy storage solutions with incentives there. And the last thing is we convert some of these assets and our investments into green bonds, which is something I'll be speaking a little bit more to today. So on to the next slide. So our inspiration with our green bonds was the war bonds of the 1940s. It was a collective effort in the face of a huge challenge, where more than 85 million Americans purchased $20 billion of Series Z war bonds at denominations as low as $25, which is $435 today. That's over 50% of the population, and that was inclusive of folks across every race, sex, and every age. And so inspired by that, outpouring of support from everyday folks to tackle a huge threat, we see the modern day existential threat as being climate change. And so on the 50th anniversary of Earth Day back in April of 2020, we released our Green Liberty Bonds to provide an investment vehicle for everyday folks to be able to help fight to fix the climate crisis. So if you go to the next slide, this is what our Green Liberty Bonds look like. We're very proud. We received significantly more investment commitments than we were able to sell in terms of bonds. And we did see a strong level of support from retail investors. So we had great success with 2 Green Liberty Bond issuances, but we also noticed some things that we wanted to see better. So if you go to the next slide, I'll talk about those quickly. So these were municipal bonds and traded on the municipal bond market. And so we did our best to make the barrier of entry as low as possible, but the lowest we could get is minimum investments of $1,000, and you had to have a broker. Those 2 were pretty high barriers of entries to LMI individuals and families. And so we sought to find a way to bring the cost down from $1,000 down to $100, which is obviously significantly more affordable for average folks, and get rid of that need for a broker. We also noticed from retail interest in the Green Liberty Bonds, as well as some surveys that we did, that shorter term debt issuances were more attractive to retail investors. And so the answer we found was crowdfunding, working with a partner called Raise Green, which is a crowdfunding marketplace focused on climate solutions. So we also, in addition to finding this avenue to lower these barriers of entries, we also needed to figure out and decide what sort of green investment assets would be used to support these investments. So if you go to the next slide, I'll start to talk about that. I'll ask everyone to look at my camera and not the slide right now, because it's not going to make sense. It's going to be confusing to start. So SBEA stands for the Small Business Energy Advantage Program. This is a program that offers free energy audits and zero interest loans to small business owners to perform energy efficiency projects. And those 0% interest loans can be repaid on their utility bill. So it's a really great program that reduces the barrier of entry for small businesses wanting to do energy efficiency projects. The problem was originally that this program was being administered by the utilities, and then the Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund, which is funded by ratepayer dollars, was paying the utilities, in this case Eversource, their guaranteed rate of return of like 10+%. Seeing this, the Green Bank recognized that the risk profile of this portfolio of loans did not align with the requisite equity return for Eversource. And so we sought to find a different financing solution that would lower the burden of payments from the Energy Efficiency Fund to free up funds to go other places. And so we went out for an RFP, and we found Amalgamated Bank as a partner. And so now you can turn your attention to the slide. You can see Amalgamated Bank and the Green Banker on the right side there. Together as senior and subordinate lenders, we purchased these loans at a discount. That discount rate is based on a spread over in an interest rate index. And so we purchased them at a discount, and then when the loan payments come in, we receive our interest. Amalgamated Bank purchases 80%, Green Bank purchases 20%. And as a subordinate lender, if there are losses, we are the first to absorb those. And this structure also includes the Energy Efficiency Fund reimbursing the Green Bank and potentially Amalgamated Bank for loan losses. So this program was put in place back in 2019. We're very proud of it because it has allowed us to attract $86 million of private capital with a Green Bank investment of just $12 million, so a leverage ratio around 7 to 8%. And with that, we've also significantly lowered the burden on the Connecticut Energy Efficiency Fund, freeing up dollars that can be now put to use in other venues. So is this funding facility that we use to support our Green Liberty notes. And so on the next slide, I can walk through that a little bit as well. So kind of a complex diagram, but I'll walk you through it. So on the upper left, you see what I was just talking about, Eversource giving loans to small business owners, and then those loans being purchased by Amalgamated, which isn't shown here, and the Green Bank. It's a Green Bank subsidiary called Cephio Holdings that purchases them. And then those loans end up all the way down at another subsidiary of the Green Banks called CGB Green Liberty Notes. And that subsidiary is funded by the Green Bank itself with a loan. It's a bit of structural engineering here, but there is a reason for it. Because of SEC regulations, if the Green Bank were to in any way guarantee the Green Liberty notes, that would move them into the municipal bond market, which would go back to those barriers I spoke about earlier, $1,000 minimum investment and need to have a broker. And so we didn't want to end up in that market again. We wanted to be able to do crowdfunding. And to do that, we had to do this kind of structural engineering to create a subsidiary that would own these loans and then issue these notes. So that's what's kind of going on here. If you go to the next slide, I can talk a little bit more about the Green Liberty notes. So looking on the bottom right, you can get a little sense for some of the terms. These function kind of like a CD. You invest your money, you get that money back with interest in 1 year. This is the terms from a raise a couple years ago, but it gives you a sense. It's that $100 minimum investment. Our goal there was to raise $250,000. And on the left, you can see an example of the benefits that folks are helping to support by investing. So this is a great example of an SBA loan that saved a family farm $85,000 a year in utility bills, reducing carbon emissions by 237 tons, which is equivalent to removing 33 cars from the road for a year. So really great climate benefits of the Green Liberty notes. And because we wanted our investors to not only have confidence that they're going to be repaid, but confidence that they're investing in something that actually is helping fight climate change, we have worked with a company called Kestrel, which is that logo to the right. Kestrel is a second-party verifier that reviews every one of our Green Liberty notes and designates them as green bonds using the green bond framework so that our investors can have confidence that someone that isn't us has reviewed these and has in fact designated them as green bonds. With that, I will go to the next slide and talk a little bit about some of the successes of the program. So this is actually a little bit outdated. We've now done 11 successful issuances. As you can see, starting at the top, our initial goal was $250,000, and it took us a couple times to really figure out the marketing and build some buzz around this. But since then, we have sold out every single issuance, which means we receive more investment commitments than what we are aiming to raise. And so what we do in that situation is we have an allocation method, which means we prioritize certain investments. So number one, we're prioritizing those smaller dollars investments. So $1,000 or less, you get prioritized. If you're a Connecticut investor, you get prioritized. If you've invested previously and are reinvesting, so that means perhaps a year ago you invested and now you want to take your principal and interest and just reinvest in another 1-year term, we protect those investors as well. Because the goal of this has always been to provide an investment opportunity for folks that are not able to access the current green bond market because of those high minimum payments and the need for a broker, as well as some of the other barriers that they face. So we protect those smaller dollars, and our maximum investment is $25,000. In total, we have raised over $3 million now through 11 issuances. That's 440 individual investors and nearly 1,996 total investments. So we are really proud of this program. We do think it's replicable for other states. And Yeah, we really wanted to create something that was accessible to all people. And I think we found that in Green Liberty Notes. So I will hand it back to Vero.
Thank you so much, David. So we have a bunch of questions in the chat that we will get to in a minute. Next up, we will hear from David Comis at Maryland Energy Administration. And I should also mention, because it's come up a couple times in the chat, the slides will be shared. So you will have access to all that great information. And then if you go to the tippy top of your screen, there is next to the little gear, there is something called materials, and you will find a more detailed bio of the great speakers we have here with you today. So on this note, David Comis, up to you.
Thank you. If we could bring on my slides, thank you. My name again is David Comis, and I work at the Maryland Energy Administration. In the next few minutes, I'd like to talk about the ongoing community solar LMI PPA, meaning low and moderate income power purchase agreement, grant program in Maryland. Next slide. In 2015, the Maryland General Assembly passed the state's first community solar law and assigned the program management responsibility to the newly authorized community solar pilot program to the Maryland Public Service Commission. The pilot program was designed to allow community solar capacity under 3 categories that were based on both the use case and the project type. The first one was low and moderate income, for which they authorized 30% of the capacity. Small brownfield and others, what does other mean? It means rooftop really, which we call SBO, which also received 30% of the capacity, and the open capacity, which had no restrictions at all. The Public Service Commission did not provide any financial incentives to help the program get started. However, the Maryland Energy Administration was concerned that projects in the low and moderate income category would be difficult to finance because of the assumed higher financial risk of the low and moderate income subscribers. We also wanted to ensure that community solar development would not be disproportionately focused on the categories with the fewest restrictions, meaning the open category and the small brownfield and other category. As a result, in 2017, the Maryland Energy Administration developed a community solar LMI PPA grant program, separate from the pilot program that was being run by the Public Service Commission. This program offers incentives for residential solar subscriptions offered by registered subscriber organizations. Projects incentivized by the Community Solar LMI PPA grant program bring sustainability and cost savings benefits to Maryland's low and moderate income community and helps to ensure that community solar adoption across Maryland is equitable. Next slide. When developing the program, I was trying to be responsive to the following perceived low and moderate income community needs. First, any monetary discount had to be substantial enough to make it worthwhile for low and moderate income subscribers to take their time to apply. 5% discount wasn't considered to be enough, and that's what was being offered on the open market. 2, the subscription must be responsive to the fact the low and moderate income households may move around, and as such, the community solar subscription had to be portable, at least within the electrical service territory, and must be able to be canceled fairly quickly without a significant penalty. Third, the process of household income verification had to be painless and with little or no cost. And fourth, the developers needed access to funds at a comparable interest rate as projects that were perceived by the financial community to be without risk, or at least the risk associated with an open community solar project. In addition to these issues, incentives were developed as followed, or at least to address these issues. This is what we did. Projects had to offer an effective discount rate of at least 20% below the retail rate for electricity while on the standard offer service. This was relaxed in the second year down to a 15% discount, and we've kept it at a 15% discount thereafter. The second, higher incentives were provided for subscriptions that required shorter minimum subscription periods. Most power purchase agreements are for 20 years. This probably wasn't a great idea for the low and moderate income community, so I provided an incentive to shorten it up. In fact, discounts as high as $77,000 for a 2 megawatt project were offered if the subscription term were reduced to 1 year or less. Now, as it turns out, the subscriber organizations independently decided to make the minimum subscription period much shorter, often 1 month, with minimal penalty for early termination of the subscription. Since this is what I wanted from the beginning, and industry came to this position on their own, the incentive was no longer required, so I just dropped it and replaced it with an incentive to help with the household income verification. We borrowed some ideas from Illinois and presented the Public Service Commission with some very low-cost ways to verify a household income. Once the Public Service Commission adopted these recommendations, there was very little need for this income verification incentive. However, I left it in place, but to be honest, of all the projects that we've supported, only 2 have ever asked for any of this money. And so in reality, it really wasn't needed. The issue of the perceived low incomes, the low credit score risk, was addressed with the Community Solar Guarantee Grant Program, which is a second program that we put in place. Under this program, the Maryland Energy Administration would guarantee the energy payments for the low and moderate income subscribers for the first 7 years of the project. The first 7 years being the time frame when the venture capitalists are most concerned. This guarantee came with the assumption that subscriber organizations would kick off non-payers and replace them with people who would pay their bills. As a result, over about 7 years, it was assumed that the financial risk of the subscribers would be equivalent to that of a group of high-income subscribers. You'd get a late payment every now and then, but people would pay their bills. The financiers would no longer have justification to charge more for project development funding. And that's all I'm going to talk about for this program of credit enhancements, as it could be a topic in and of itself. What was the result of all of this? Well, the average low and moderate income subscriber saves 23.38% on their utility, on the energy costs on their utility bill. That's 23% from the retail rate from the utility companies. That's much higher than the 15% minimum that I established as a threshold. The developers quickly understood that the short minimum term requirement, and now they typically require 1 month or less, and sometimes no notice at all. They tend to have little, and in most cases, no early termination penalty. While we initially provided some monetary support to the developers for household income verification, the most important advance was really the development for and adoption by the Public Service Commission of easier methods to determine household income. I want to be very clear, the market arrived at these savings and terms. They were not the result of a government mandate. Next slide. To date, 14.3 million has been budgeted for this program. The demand for program grants has substantially exceeded the budgeted funds, but fortunately, to date, the Maryland Energy Administration has been able to shift funds to deploy a full $16.4 million to support low and moderate income subscribers for community solar projects. Over 120 megawatts of solar capacity has been incentivized, with 55.5 megawatts, that's like 45%, dedicated to low and moderate income subscribers. The average low and moderate income subscribes for about 8 kilowatts from the community solar array. So when all of the projects that have been funded to date, and there are new projects coming in every day, but for all the projects that have been funded to date, about 7,000 low and moderate income households will benefit for 20 years of low cost energy, helping them improve their lives. Next slide. The pilot program ends in about 6 weeks on the 31st of December of 2024, with the permanent program starting on January 1st. Under the pilot program, 30% of the energy was for capacity in the low and moderate income category. Projects in this category were required to set aside 10% of their energy for low income subscribers. As such, in reality, only 3% of the total pilot program energy was earmarked for low income subscribers. Having said that, much more did come in for them. Under the permanent program, 40% of energy will go to LMI subscribers, but there is no earmark for low income subscribers. And that's important, and I'll get to that in a second. Next slide. With the coming of the permanent program on the 1st of January, changes have been made to the Maryland Energy Administration's Community Solar LMI PPA program. For community solar projects getting capacity under the permanent program, the LMI PPA grant has now been restricted to support only low-income households, not low and moderate. As all projects must have 40% LMI subscriptions, we'll see how the market handles the moderate income subscribers in both the area of low income and in early termination. To be eligible to apply for a grant under the LMI PPA program, new projects must guarantee at least 15% of their energy output will be subscribed to low-income households with at least a 15% effective discount rate from the utility's retail rate. And again, since this is going to be our first year, we'll see how that works. I'm going to take a minute to show how the grant amount is calculated. Project variables are highlighted in yellow. Everything else you shouldn't touch. The incentive is based on the amount of benefit derived by the low-income community over and above some minimum criteria which is specified in the baseline case. First, we determine the retail cost of electricity for the utility. That's less any local taxes. Because of the way the tax structure in Maryland occurs, there are some areas where there are high local taxes, and other areas where there aren't. And it would be unfair to go unworkable to try and do it otherwise. So we determine the retail cost of electricity less local taxes. In this case, the example case, 14 cents per kilowatt hour was used. Once this yellow cell is filled in, then the number is automatically copied to the similar calculation in the baseline case. So you'll see 14 up there under year 0. After looking at historical trends in Maryland, I've determined that the cost of electricity is going up at about 2% per year. And as such, I modeled the out-year costs of utility-provided energy for the next 20 years. You'll notice on this slide it only goes to year 5, but the calculation does go all the way out to year 20. The baseline case assumes a 15% discount for the first year with a 2.9% per year escalator. I calculate the assumed power purchase agreement rate out for the next 20 years. I then calculate the net present value of the yearly savings in cents per kilowatt hour over the 20-year period using, since it's a net present value, you have to have a discount rate. I use a 10% discount rate. In the example shown above, a simple addition of the savings for the 20 years would have come up at 23.638 cents per kilowatt hour, but the net present value of the savings would only be 14.159 cents per kilowatt hour, which is what you see. I then ask for the percentage discount offered for the current proposed project. In this case, it's a 25% discount from the utility rate. The model then calculates this first year savings out at a 2% escalator. As this is the same as the utility rate escalator, it remains 25% discount over the full 20-year period. Once again, the net present value of the 20 years of savings is calculated using a 10% discount rate. In this example, the savings are 37.495 cents per kilowatt hour. This is a 23.34 cent per kilowatt hour improvement over the baseline case, and that's what I'm going to be incentivizing. You'll note that the last line on this slide is in terms of dollars per kilowatt hour as opposed to cents per kilowatt hour, which is why it looks very small. Next slide. We then look at the specific project details. Again, cells in yellow are project variables. In this example, the project is at 2.8 megawatt or 2,800 kilowatt DC array. Under the rules of the permanent program, 40% of this energy or of this power or 1.12 megawatts must be subscribed to low and moderate income subscribers. The developers of this project have decided to guarantee 1,000 kilowatt hours DC for low income subscribers. As this is more than the 15% of the array energy, it's eligible to be for the grant. The production of the array is based on its location, its tilt, its azimuth, whether it's a tracker or a fixed tilt. Fixed tilt arrays tend to be around, in Maryland, tend to be about 1,350 kilowatt hours AC produced for every single kilowatt DC over a year, whereas single axis trackers tend to be about 1,550 and dual axis trackers tend to be around 1,650. But whatever the array is, that's the number that goes in there. This example is clearly a fixed tilt south-facing array. The value can be found or calculated by PV watts or PV syst or helioscope, or there are a number of other software programs out there that will give you this number. So now we know that for this project, which I call Project XYZ, 1,000 kilowatts DC producing 1,347,000 kilowatt hours per year will be dedicated to low-income subscribers. These subscribers will receive a benefit over 20 years of 23.34 cents per kilowatt hour, which totals $314,340. And this is the amount of funding allocated to this grant agreement. Now, some projects are very large, and others allocate a huge percentage of their energy to low and moderate income. This is great, but we have a limited amount of grant funds, so we've limited the amount for any given project to $500,000 per project. Given that multiple projects may be limited to $500,000 per project, we rank the projects based on their total benefit to the subscribers as opposed to the amount of money that we're providing for them. Now, the total benefit to the subscribers, of course, it has no cap, and that's what we use when we rank them. Next slide. This year, this is our first year, we're adding an additional incentive to encourage the development of community solar projects on landfills. These are special projects with 100% of the energy dedicated to low-income subscribers. In return for a very, very generous building incentive, we require that 50% of the energy to be provided to low-income subscribers for free. The state will identify the households to receive this income, and we're doing this through our energy assistance project. The remaining 50% of the energy will be provided at a 25% discount to additional low-income subscribers. It could be the same that are getting some free energy. It could be to others also. The subscriber organization keeps the SRECs and can depreciate the array as allowed by current tax law. If possible, MEA will try to pair this program with DOE's Clean Energy Connector program to get low-cost communities solar energy to low-income households. And in fact, I just received notice this morning that we're moving forward with this. Next slide. I want to close with a couple of comments about the value of the Clean Energy States Alliance in the development of this program. Much of my early research came from CISA publications. Many of my better ideas were borrowed, okay, they were stolen, from other state programs that were discussed during CISA meetings. I've tried to be open about where I got ideas, not wanting to take credit for other people's works, but bottom line, CISA and its member states were key to building the foundation for this program. And next slide. To learn more go to energy.maryland.gov, and I've provided my phone number and Brandon's phone number, and we are both eligible to answer your questions. Thank you. And Vero, back to you.
Thank you, David. And I promise we did not pay David Comis to say that.
Not at all.
We appreciate the nice comments. Why don't we bring you and David Beech and Brandon as well back on the screen, and then go through some questions. So we have about 16 minutes. I have a whole bunch of questions. So why don't we start to give you a little bit of a break, David, since you were just talking with other David Beech. And so here are some questions that came in the chat, which I have compiled here. So first, can you explain why shorter term investments are seen as more attractive? Do you have a sense of that? Why do we care about shorter maturity?
Yeah, so there's not like an objective reason. We did some surveys to try and figure out how we could reach more average folks to get their interest in investments. And what we found in that survey, and also with our Green Liberty bonds, was that retail average investors were much more interested in investing on the shorter term side, and then the longer term. I'm sure we can go into thoughts and maybe why that's the case for various reasons, but it's what we saw in multiple forms of data. And so that is what guided us to make the decision. So it's not like generally like optimal investing is shorter term is more attractive. It's meant to be in terms of that's what we found from the people we were trying to reach.
Very good, thank you. And so staying on this question of the terms of the Green Liberty notes, someone is asking, can you explain how interest is generating for the investors when the loans are 0% interest?
Yeah, so the loans are 0% interest to the customers, but we purchase them at a discount. So Eversource might give a customer a $100 loan, and that, let's just say to make it easy, it's a 1-year loan. Our interest rate is based on an index, and so let's say the interest rate should be calculated at 5%. And so then we would buy that loan at something like $95, $96, because then when $100 come in, that would be giving us essentially a 5% return. So that's how it works. Then the energy efficiency fund still pays Eversource for the remaining, $4, but it takes the other 96 and shifts it from Eversource's cost of capital to ours, which is where a lot of that savings comes to the energy efficiency fund. So yeah, there's no free lunch. We purchase at a discount, which is how we get the interest rate, but it's still 0% interest to the customers.
Very good, thank you. And what kind of losses? What's the amount of losses that you generally see if you have a percentage to share on this kind of products?
Yeah, we've seen around 2 to 3% in terms of delinquency. So I think that's pretty solid. And the way it's set up is the energy efficiency fund pays those losses. Sometimes that's at a delay. A loan is delinquent when it hasn't been paid for 3 or 4 months. So we've seen delinquencies be pretty low overall. And also the Green Bank, being a subordinate lender, our senior lender has seen essentially no loan losses because we absorb those first. So
it sounds like a good deal for the investors,
yeah.
right? For your own investors, yeah.
Yes.
So what was the total number of investors again?
We've had 440 individuals, and they've made 996 investments. So as far as we know, we were the first ones to kind of offer reinvestment. And two things are happening. One, we're in the market about every 3 months, and so people like to keep buying Green Liberty notes. But also, we offer when it's up, when your Green Liberty note is up for maturity, you have the option to receive your money back with interest, or we'll take your money, your principal and interest, and we'll put it into the next one, and so you can take advantage of compound interest. So that's how we've had nearly 1,000 investments from 440 individuals.
So you're turning a 1 year a 1 year short maturity thing into a longer thing.
Yes.
How do you know how many people or what's the proportion of people that are taking advantage of this kind of compounding and reinvesting year over year?
It varies a bit, but we've seen up to 50%, and sometimes even higher, of folks who've invested reinvest. And we do offer a small 1/4% interest rate boost to people who want to reinvest as kind of an encouragement.
Oh, interesting. So this is like your your retirement saving strategy right there, potentially. Okay, so explain a little bit, if you may, is there any geographic border on this investment? Is it just Connecticut? Is it happening elsewhere? Where are these investments taking place? And who
Sure.
can invest? I think these are two different questions.
Yeah. So the loans that are supporting the notes are just in Connecticut in Eversource territory. Eversource kind of has about 80% of Connecticut residents in their territory. So that's where all the loans are taking place. Anyone in the United States can invest in the Green Liberty notes. And so we've had investments from, I think, about 40 states now. Still trying to round out some of the last few. But yeah, a majority, over 50% of our investors live in the state of Connecticut, but we have had people invest from Alaska, Hawaii, Minnesota, all over the place. So it's open to anyone in the U.S.
And do you know if other states are doing or starting similar things?
We've had many conversations with folks who are interested in looking at this. I'm not sure if there's anyone actively doing crowdfunding at the same time as we are right now. I've seen a fair amount of like one-off projects, but I think we're still waiting to see more states create a full-on program. But I know a lot of folks are interested, and the Connecticut Green Bank, we're really proud of trying to be an innovative green bank and kind of lead the field. And so I do expect to see more coming up because we've kind of gone through some of the tricks and troubles and difficult things that can come with this. And so working with our partners, the process is a lot smoother now. And so I think it will be a little bit easier for new folks to enter. But at the moment, I think we're the only ones out there doing this.
So I guess the follow-on question to that is, what does it take for a state that wants to replicate this to do this, right? Do you have to have an RFP, I'm guessing, on for some of those services? You've selected Raise Green. Do you build the program before you select your RFP winner, or do you select someone who can advise you on the whole thing? Like, what's the best approach?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think coming up with a structure or what you're trying to, what you're raising money for or what you're raising money against. So we had, the goal of wanting to reach more folks, and we had already a pipeline of these loans that we knew could service investments. So those are two big keys to have. Knowing what we kind of wanted it to look like in terms of the one-year nature, and also having a pipeline were two big precursors. And then, we kind of went out and found Raise Green. There are a lot more kind of folks kind of doing this work now. We chose Raise Green because of their climate focus, but there are others doing this work. And then, the hardest part is the first one, and then it goes from there. It's a little bit of like legal costs. Like I was saying, we had to make sure that we didn't trip any SEC triggers. So that's a little bit more complicated if you're a state agency. If you're like a nonprofit green bank, maybe it might be a little bit easier. But yeah, there's a little bit of like that legal cost, making sure you're not tripping up against any regulations. And then, coming up with your structure, how it's going to work. I don't think you necessarily need consultants, but usually you need a pipeline of projects, or you need to have one project that you're raising money for and be able to tell the story. So I didn't answer it specifically in terms of what's exactly good things, but those are some of the things I think about.
Yeah, no, these are all good answers. Thank you, David. Okay, let's turn to Marilyn now. So we also have a bunch of questions for you, David Comis this time, and Brendan. So first, kind of a general nomenclature question. How is a community PPA program different from a community solar program, a standard community solar program? What does the PPA bring there?
There are two major forms for community solar. One is where people can actually buy into the array and purchase the array. So I would buy 10 kilowatts out of this array, and for as long as that array is around, I would get the energy credited to my account with no additional charge. That's the purchased option. The power purchase agreement option is some third party owns the entire system, and I am purchasing the energy services from that array. So that's where the power purchase agreement comes out. The purchased model is fraught with issues that David Beech just alluded to, and that can very quickly turn into a security where now you have to file the 10K form and work through the Securities and Exchange Commission. And there's a lot of legal work because now you have to have a legally contract with each of the partial owners of this array. And so in most cases, people just stay away from the purchased option. They go with the third-party owner who is responsible for the operations and maintenance of the array. Most of those have subscriber management organizations that go and actually find the subscribers for the array and sign them up. And people pay every month for the energy that they receive from this array through their utility company.
Thank you. So another kind of broad landscape question is the Maryland program is there a statewide cap on the amount of community solar allowed on the grid?
Yes. Under the pilot program, it started like at 195 megawatts, and over time it increased to 537 megawatts. But again, that program ends on December 31st. As we progress to the permanent program, we're limited to the net metering cap for the state. The net metering cap for the state is 3,000 megawatts. We're about a third of the way through there right now, but they're expecting that we will close in fairly quickly now, and we'll see whether the legislature raises that cap or not.
Okay, very good. So you mentioned that the subscription is portable as people are moving within the service territory. So what are some limitations, some challenges to making this portable across utility territories? And maybe you can give a little bit of background as to what the utility context looks like in Maryland. Is it 2 utilities? Is it 1 utility? Is it 500? Where are we sitting in terms of the diversity?
There are 4 major investor-owned utilities in Maryland, with about 19 additional municipal or cooperatives. The only utilities that have community solar programs are the 4 major investor-owned utilities, which covers about 95% of the population of the state. I'm sorry, could you re-ask the question?
The first part of the question, which was really the second part, is what are some challenges to making subscriptions portable across service territory lines?
There are no problems. It is not allowed.
Okay.
It's not allowed by regulation. That's one of the reasons that we push so very hard to have the little or no penalty for early termination, so that if you did move out of the service territory, you weren't stuck with a large payment or penalty or multiple years of obligation under the power purchase agreement.
Okay, and so if you move, can you explain that a little bit more? If you move, if I have a subscription for where I live and I move across the street, different utility, and I can't take my subscription with me, what happens exactly?
You would do an early termination with whoever you had your community solar with, and now you would simply become a utility account under the new service territory. You would find a community solar program in your new service territory, and you'd sign up there.
But there's no delay, there's no extra months. There's, like you say, you move and that's the end, that's the date. If I move on July 1st, I can end my subscription on July 1st?
In most, for the low and moderate income, in almost all cases, you can, yes.
Okay.
I have not been tracking the rest of the program. I don't know how that works. But if you're out of the service territory, you really can't do anything with it. You're not using any of the energy.
Yeah. And so when you're talking about little notice, little penalty, how different is that from other programs you've seen elsewhere? Like is this something that is specific to Maryland? I mean, it exists in a couple other states, but how widespread is this of a model?
I cannot speak to that. I don't know what other states are doing in this regard. I just know that it was important. It was important for the program that I was putting together. So I made sure that that was incentivized. And over time, it has simply become the industry standard. I don't need to incentivize it anymore, which is what makes it very good.
Excellent. Well, this was very quick. We have 13 seconds left before the end of this webinar. Can I volunteer you all to answer some additional questions if people email you? Would you be available, or would you rather that we collect all the questions for you all and forward them on? Happy to do either way.
I am happy to answer questions that come across my desk from anyone. So if you want to coordinate them through CISO, or if they want to come direct to me, that's quite fine.
All right.
on my part. I know I haven't talked really at all this webinar. Hello, everybody. I'm sure several of you know me on this webinar, but David did a fantastic job at talking about the program. But seconded, if you've got any questions, I'm always happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. Thank
Same
you,
here.
David. Thank you, Brendan. And thank you, David Comis. Thank you to everyone who participated in this webinar as well. Really appreciate everyone's time. I certainly learned a lot about those two programs. I'm very grateful for you all for being here today. And we will see you on the next one. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.